I had dinner with a client, massive tech company. During lunch, on the spot, he said to me, "Are you free next month?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so." And he's like, "I'd like you to come to my country and come to the office and present about Japan, and we'll pay for everything."
And today I'm here with.
Robert Purse from McLaren Group Marketing. We specialize in end-to-end marketing.
What made you decide to start a business here in Japan?
Well, simply speaking, I turned 40.
Okay,
So, yeah, thank you. Well, now I'm like 43, but at the time I turned 40 and I was like, well, it's something I'd always wanted to do. So I sort of felt it was now or never to give it a shot. And I was lucky to have a mentor who turned out to be my donor in a sense, or my first client. So that made it a relatively soft landing to kind of take the jump and dive into doing my own thing.
Do you think if you didn't have a mentor that you would have started your own business?
That's a great question. It would have definitely been harder, mainly from the financial point of view, because I have a family. I have 2 kids in international school as well, so I couldn't really just sort of jump straight in, and I didn't have that buffer of, let's say, 6 months or 1 year's salary to fall back on. So it would have definitely been harder. I think that the drive would have still been there to do it. So sort of hard to answer directly, but no, I'm definitely grateful for that mentor to make that soft landing.
So you mentioned mentors. How important is a mentor in order to start a business, and how can people find their own mentor?
Another great question. You're good at this. I mean, yeah, for sure, mentors are important. I think you have you can have business coaches, or you can have mentors. I guess business coach is probably a bit more of a paid thing, where mentor is a bit more of a personal thing, let's say. But I think there's a lot of crossover anyway. But for sure, it's important because they look at you holistically. Like a guru sort of a thing. Guru probably takes it to a spiritual level, but I think at least if you have a mentor, it's someone that knows you personally, and it's sort of been with you through different parts of your career, so they can really give you advice from that point of view, as opposed to, for example, someone inside a company where they're just going to they just have a small part of your history, and they're just looking at they're looking at your growth within that company, for example, as opposed to your growth holistically as a professional and also as a person.
So if someone wants to build a business, but everyone in their inner circle has never built a business, can any of them be a mentor to them?
Yeah, like obviously the main benefit of a mentor is that they've been through it before. They have their personal experience. So I think naturally that lends itself to older people, or people who are older than you. So they can kind of give you that advice. So I think you know I guess if you're looking within your circle, or that they're the only kind of options you have, you can still probably learn from trial and error. So the trials and errors that your friendship group or your group of business contacts have made, you can still learn from that. But I think it is still beneficial to try and step outside of that and try to find that connection, which is not an easy thing to do. But I think if and when you find the right person, you can really create a long-lasting relationship that's mutually beneficial. I think that's another important thing with mentorship, is it needs to have that. It can't just be someone telling you everything to do and you asking all the questions. It needs to be satisfying for them as well, to see you grow and to see you be successful.
Do you think it's important to have a co-founder when starting a business?
Tricky question. I think it really depends on your skill set, what kind of business you're trying to build, and whether you have the skill set to build that business or not, or at least the network. A lot of times you see you have sort of the marketing and sales guy, and then you have more like the tech guy. So generally that's a pretty good combination. You have the guy who's out there, who's making the connections and doing the deals, and then have the guy who's a bit more executional. So I think in that kind of context, it works. Me personally, I don't. I think mainly because, I have the ability within my own skill set and also within my network of partners and suppliers to execute on most of the projects that we get. But that being said, more recently, I am also considering it. Um, as to further extend those kinds of services we can offer outside of my skill set.
It sounds like you're thinking about getting a co-founder to expand your business.
That's correct. I work very closely with two guys, two or three people right now, but it's more in a partner context. So I am sort of thinking, moving into the future, would it make sense to kind of bring them on board in a different capacity to what we're currently working in now?
For you, what would be the difference between having a co-founder versus someone as a staff?
Another great question, and something I've been mulling over for a while now. Personally, like I of course everyone likes and needs money, but I'm not the kind of guy where I want to drive a Ferrari and I want to live in this big house. Like I just money for me is just means to an end. So my kids can go to international school, my wife can quit her job, I can take some family holidays. If I can cover those bases, I'm pretty good. So, I think from a financial point of view, it would probably be better just to get staff. But me personally, because I'm not super money hungry in that sense, I would be more than happy to share profits with someone if the business was successful. And I think too that would also connect to their motivation to work for the business. If there was, instead of just getting a salary, if they were getting some kind of additional benefit or cut of profits or something, then I think that would be more appealing to them as well.
You mentioned that you started your company at 40. How was it during that time? Did you feel concerned because you already had a family?
Yes. So as I mentioned before, I was lucky because I had that soft landing, let's say, soft takeoff. So that really sort of reduced a lot of the risk and apprehension about taking that step, for sure.
If someone wants to start a business now, but they have a family, they have debt, how can they do that?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge, and I think you really need to be kind of realistic when you go into it. I think there's a lot of hype around founders and startups and all this sort of stuff, but the reality is, there's a lot of people struggling. let's say, out there to make their business work and to make money. So I think you do need to be realistic. You need to vet your product or service, and you need to sort of talk to your potential customers or clients and just get real feedback. You know what I mean? From a neutral point of view, are they actually going to use this service or buy this service or buy this product? And then just try to be realistic. I think there's a sweet spot. You need to be optimistic, and you don't want to be pessimistic about the whole thing, but you need to be a little bit more than realistic, I'd say. You still need to have hope, and you need to be moving towards, you need to have confidence that you can get somewhere, but at the same time, every now and then it's good to have a reality check and just sort of, run some numbers maybe and just be like, okay, what's this going to look like? If this works out, you could run a few different scenarios. What's that going to look like financially? Where am I going to be in 1 year, 2 years time? It's almost like a theoretical task because no one knows, right? But at least sitting down there and doing that will bring some of the reality back into the equation and kind of help you see if you've actually got something and where you may be financially in a few years time.
So it's really about that analysis, it seems like. For you, What steps did you take to ensure that your business would be successful?
Yeah, so no one can ever insure it, I guess. But for me, because I had that relatively soft landing, um, my strategy was to focus on that client and
Mm,
spend like about 80% of my time, let's say, to make them satisfied, and spend the remaining 20% building, looking for other clients and trying
mm,
to build my business outside of a just one client business, because you can't just have a one client business, right? Then it's
mm.
not really a business. So that's kind of how I manage it.
For you, when you look at your business, do you deem it as successful? And if so, why?
It's work in progress, I would say. I'm so far I'm super happy with where I am and where I've come over the past 2.5 years.
Mm,
Uh, the business is growing. Um, I'm making more money than I did as a salaryman,
mm,
so that's a success in and of itself, I would say. And I think the thing that excites me about the business is the future,
mm,
because obviously in the beginning, especially when you're starting out, it's a lot about planting seeds, and it can get a bit disgruntling, if that's the word, um, disheartening maybe,
mm,
when you don't see them coming back so quickly, right?
mm,
But the longer you do that and invest in that, you start to see them coming back,
mm,
and that's really really satisfying.
mm,
When you see a seed that you would have planted, 6 months, even a year ago, that person will come back to you.
mm. So, how did you plant those seeds to get people to convert to clients?
Yeah, it is a lot about networking, getting your name out there.
Mm,
Obviously, LinkedIn is a good one, um, because someone once told me, you don't sell to your network, you sell through your network.
mm,
So basically, like, especially for me, because my target is clients outside of Japan.
mm,
So it's not that easy to get directly to them. So I often have to go through partners who have access to them.
mm,
So if those partners know about me, then they can introduce my services to those end clients.
mm,
So a lot of the early stage business development I did was connecting with those people and partners
mm,
and explaining about what we do. And then, like, slowly you get one client, and then maybe you get one project from them, but then you get another project for them, you
mm.
get a different client. So a lot of business, I think, is about momentum.
Got it.
So
Got it.
if you get the momentum, you can really, yeah, there's nothing to stop you, I guess you
Mm.
could say.
So then, how do you network properly without spamming?
um yeah, so I think it's about, my take on networking is it's definitely quality over quantity. So you want to connect with the right people,
Mm,
who are then going to be able to connect you to the right people.
okay.
um and I think another key point is, what's the saying, uh like, basically, things in business, what I've learned is, don't always move as fast as you want them to, right?
Mm,
Like, you obviously want everything to move as fast as possible, but that's not the way humans work, that's not the way businesses work. So you do just need to be patient, and, like, don't push people, like,
mm,
that would get into the spamming space.
mm,
I think it's okay to kind of reach out to people, even in a cold kind of setting, and just explain to them what you do.
mm,
And then maybe 6 months later,
mm,
if you made a good impression. This is another important point, is making a good impression, which lasts. Good impressions last. That's really true, and I found that.
mm,
So if you make a good impression in the beginning, it may take time for that to come back, but in my experience, it does. When that need arises
mm,
for your services, um, if you've made a good first impression, that will come
mm,
back. So you don't need to, every month. I don't need to, like, this is a classic example,
mm,
right? Like, hopefully I made a good impression. So like after this, if you have a client that's like, oh, we are looking to enter the Japanese market, we need some market research, or we need a marketing strategy. Like, oh, actually, I know this guy.
Correct.
And that could happen like 6 months from now.
Correct.
But in that period of time, I don't have to be like mailing you every month, being like, hey man, how you going? Like, do you have any clients? Or you know what I mean?
So what's a personal example where you made a good lasting impression on someone and then they became a client, or at least maybe referred you to a client?
So it's a little bit confidential, but I'll try to walk around it. But I had dinner with a client, a lunch with a client the other day, massive tech company. And it was a foreign office from that tech company. And we went to lunch, and during lunch on the spot, he said to me, "Are you free next month?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think so." And he's like, "I'd like you to come to my country and come to the office and present about Japan, and we'll pay for everything." So, bit of a long story, that one. In the end, I couldn't go because I had a different appointment in another country.
Disappointment.
Yeah. Right. So I was like, no, deal's off, man. But my partner went, and he presented there, and it's turned out to be a really successful exercise.
If you can tell us, what was the impression though? Because I think a lot of people know the power of networking, but they don't know how to do it properly, and they don't know how to make a good impression. How can they do it?
I'd say the number one thing is just to be authentic.
So, a lot of people say that word. A lot of people say, but really, like, how does someone become authentic?
Yeah. So I think I'm lucky because I'm naturally extroverted and I like people. So I don't need to fake. I don't need to fake it. Like if I go to an event and I meet someone, I'm genuinely interested in them as a person, as a human, business or what. It doesn't really matter. So I think, for me, it's lucky. So this almost goes back to the previous point about co-founders and things like that. Like if for example, you're not naturally like that, it may be good to find someone who is to partner with, especially in that business development sales space. Because I think, if you're naturally introverted and you prefer being inside and doing executional stuff, it is difficult. You know what I mean? And to my previous point, it's hard to be authentic if you're not genuinely, enjoying meeting people and being outside and, talking about your product. So I'm not saying you can't do it and you should give up, but, it may be good to partner with someone in that context. And then, as much as possible, try to be authentic. And maybe another additional point to that would be, don't try to sell. It sounds a bit cliche, but just try to understand them and their business problems in the beginning. And then if you feel that your solution, whatever fits in, you can bring that up and try and slot it in. But at the get-go, it should be, just trying to understand where they are, where they're coming from, what challenges they have, and, ideally your product fits in there.
There's many people who want to start a business, but how does someone know if they're the right person to start a business?
Great question. Yeah, it does. When you start a business, especially if you're like solo, you need to be able to do a lot of different things. You need to be able to understand a lot of different parts of the business. So you may have your speciality. So for me, it's marketing and market research. But now I have to understand legal. I have to understand finance. I have to understand HR. So you really need to be like open and ready to kind of take on all those things and try to work through it. I can say one thing though. I think now is the best time ever to be a solopreneur, let's say, or be in a small company or team, because all of those things I just mentioned, like, turns out ChatGPT is actually pretty good at answering them and helping them, and helping you with those problems. So I think, for that reason, you can actually kind of get a lot of additional knowledge from AI that it may have been much more difficult to get before.
So how can people utilize AI to build a business?
Yeah, I think in my experience, AI is a very good partner in terms of, as I mentioned before, dealing with a few of those core elements of business, I would say, and getting just advice and support. And also, I think in terms of brainstorming and getting feedback and ideas, it can be a very good brainstorm partner, let's say.
So it sounds like you're saying that AI is really good as a brainstorming partner as opposed to a replacement for staff or even a co-founder.
Yeah, I would definitely say that, now I can leverage HR. I would be less likely to outsource different services. But whether or not it's going to fully replace a co-founder or something is a bit of a stretch right now.
Okay. At what point did you feel like giving up in your business, and why didn't you?
Never.
Seriously?
Yeah, of
Why is
course. Because I was earning money from day one.
Okay.
So I had that base level there initially, and two, it's always been growing, and I've always the future looks bright, let's say. It's another cliche, but back to what I was telling you before, like, because I've done it for enough time now, I can see that the seeds I've planted are now sprouting, and then they're blooming, and then I'm starting to get repeat clients, repeat business from those clients. So I think, the first step is obviously getting your product or service together, right? And then you start to get clients. But then the next step is you start to get repeat from those clients. And then you start to get new clients. So I've kind of got those bases covered now, I think. Like, I've got new clients coming in, and I've got repeat business. So, yeah, I'm not giving up.
Perfect, Robert. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.